There are none.
Support. Aye. Move them. Aye.
Hello, everybody. Is there any public comments this time, this session? Seeing none, we'll move on to the agenda. Sheriff Office Department report.
Afternoon, Commissioners. Busy month of June. June 4th, we had a warrant arrest, possession of cocaine. Deputies stopped the vehicle. Driver had an aggravated assault warrant out of Lansing Police Department. After arresting him, deputies found cocaine on him. He was lodged in the county jail. June 6th, we had an assault. Deputies investigated a complaint involving a person identifying as a sovereign citizen who thought he was being followed in a vehicle. He stopped behind this vehicle and attempted to spray the driver with bear spray. He was arrested and lodged in our jail. Road rage at Waverly Road and Grand River Bridge. A female driver was road raging with another car containing 4 teenagers. The vehicle stopped on Waverly Road at the Grand River Bridge. The suspect used racial slurs towards the teenagers and grabbed one of them by the shirt collar, raised her off the ground, and tried to throw her over the bridge into the Grand River. The other 3 teenagers were able to stop her. The suspect then chased the victims, who were fleeing in their vehicle, driving on lawns, causing them to hit a tree on Holmes Road, east of Waverly Road. Deputies contacted the suspect at her home. The suspect then fought with the deputies but was arrested and secured in the back of the patrol car. The suspect then banged her head on the partition in the car, causing an injury to herself. She was treated at a local hospital, then lodged at the county jail. June 7th, at Walmart, retail fraud, assaulting a police officer causing injury. Deputies responded to a report of juveniles who were stealing from Walmart. One was cooperative and was turned over to her mother. The other assaulted the deputy on scene, causing minor injuries. The juvenile was arrested and lodged in the youth facility. Same date, domestic, OWI. Deputies respond to a report of 2 people fighting in their car in the McDonald's drive-through lane. Deputies arrived and arrested the driver for operating while intoxicated in domestic assault. The other person in the car then fought with the deputies on scene because of how intoxicated they were. They were transported to the hospital and will be seeking charges for OWI, domestic assault, and assault on deputies. Same date again, Waverly and Tecumseh River Drive. Vehicle pedestrian fatal. Deputies responded to a scene where a male was found in the middle of the road with extreme trauma. Witness said they saw him walking in the middle of the road, but no one saw him get hit by a car. The next day, a person called and turned himself in for striking the victim with a vehicle. This investigation is ongoing at this time. Excuse me. Dispatched to Red Roof Inn in Delta for shots fired complaint. The original call to 911 said there was a man shooting at 4 people in the parking lot. Deputies arrived and learned no shots had been fired, but an intoxicated man had grabbed a large knife and was chasing after people trying to stab them. The male was located and arrested. June 8th, deputies attempted to conduct a traffic stop on a black Impala without a license plate at Waverly and Sheffield. It fled northbound and the pursuit was terminated. The suspect vehicle continued northbound, causing a couple accidents at Waverly and Old Lansing. It subsequently crashed into a ditch on the ramp to eastbound I-496. A K-9 team and aerial drone were used to search for the driver, but we did not locate the suspect. Methamphetamine and heroin was found in the car, and the investigation is ongoing. June 11th, felonious assault. Deputies were dispatched to the apartments at Endicott, where a male victim was assaulted by several male suspects. During the assault of one of the suspects pointed a gun at the victim. A second suspect also produced a gun and threatened the victim with it. The victim was able to barricade himself in a bedroom and call 911. Deputies arrived on the scene and were able to secure the suspects. June 15th, deputies were dispatched on a report of a suicidal 16-year-old female on Libby Drive. She was driving to cut her wrists and jumped into the Grand River. A deputy was close, and when he arrived on scene, the female was in the water. The deputy was able to pull the female out of the water. She attempted to go back into the river, but was secured and transported to a hospital for evaluation. June 17th, criminal sexual conduct, first, armed robbery. Due to the nature of this call, I don't want to give too many details, but a female was raped by someone who was known to her. The suspect then fled the scene. The victim called 911 and deputies relocated him shortly after, running from the scene. Deputies chased him on foot and were able to catch him and arrest him. The suspect was lodged on several charges, including first-degree criminal sexual conduct and armed robbery. June 21st, Sharp Park. There was a 400-person party. We were dispatched to a party at Sharp Park with about 400 people attending, and about 10 to 15 of them were fighting. The deputies responded and were able to clear out the park. June 22nd, fleeing and looting. A sergeant was sitting at a traffic light on southbound Waverly at the railroad tracks and observed a vehicle making a right turn from southbound Lansing Road to northbound Waverly, drive off the road and crash into a couple signs and a gate, and continue northbound on Waverly, reaching speeds of 100 miles per hour. The sergeant attempted to stop the vehicle, but the driver would not stop. The driver of the suspect vehicle lost control and crashed into a light pole in the city of Lansing. He then fled on foot to the river trail. Lansing Police Department K-9 team and an aerial drone were deployed and found him hiding in the river. He was taken to Sparrow Hospital in Charlotte for evaluation and then lodged at the juvenile facility. June 27th, fleeing and eluding police, OWI, deputies tried to conduct a traffic stop on a female who was driving all over the road and suspected to be intoxicated. The suspect fled in her vehicle, resulting in a short pursuit before she crashed it and was arrested. The suspect was medically evaluated and at a local hospital before being lodged in our jail on several charges. June 28th, OWI resisting and obstructing. An intoxicated male driver almost struck a patrol car while driving on Waverly Road and Michigan Avenue. When deputies stopped him, he refused to exit his vehicle and fought with them. He was arrested for OWI and resisting and obstructing arrest. Well, it sounds like a very fun month. It wasn't. A very busy month in June. I don't know what's happening in Yelk County, so I can't give any reports what happened in Yelk County. I don't get a report from state police, so I can't give you any information there. Any questions for me?
I don't see any questions. Thank you, Sheriff. Moving on to agenda number 7, Central Dispatch, a department report.
Good afternoon. As you can tell, it was a busy month for my dispatchers in June. And then just a few projects that are going on at our center. So downstairs in the Emergency Operations Center, we found during one of the storms where we lost power that not all of our plugs were hooked up to our generator. So Technology Services so kindly came in during the storm and ran tons of extension cords to run them to outlets that are hooked up to the generator backup. So we finally got those updated and they are now all hooked up to the generator backup. So we have all of our screens, our audio, all that available if a storm hits and we lose power. Our EOC is able to function. So I have talked in the past about the law enforcement mobile computer terminals MCT replacements. So we went ahead and replaced the smaller agencies. So Charlotte, Eaton Rapids, Potterville, Olivet, Bellevue, Grand Ledge, I'm sure I'm missing one. but we held off on the sheriff's department. So Eric Daly and I had a conversation, and we're waiting on some final numbers, but we are, and obviously the Delta contract, but looking at making sure if that goes through, that the Delta MCTs would be replaced so that all of our law enforcement vehicles would be all on the same page for computer replacement. ASAP to PSAP, this has been a 5-year project. So basically, a reminder of what that is alarm companies can enter calls right into our CAD system. So when we get an alarm call, whether it be like a breaking and entering call, a fire alarm, alarm companies can get that put right in our CAD. If we need a key holder or more information, we can just type it in the narrative. This will save tons of time for my dispatchers being on the phone, because a lot of times we'll have to call back the alarm company, ask a question. We have to give a reference number, wait for them to find the incident. So it is very time consuming. This originally, they were trying to make it work through the state law enforcement information network, NLITS, big fancy words. We had it working for a moment. They made some changes at the state, and then it stopped working. A new company took over it, and it is now going cloud-based. It's very secure, but we are looking that we can move forward with that and hopefully have it deployed in about 3 to 4 months. Our communications unit support, we did take our communications trailer out to the 2025 Diamond-Dale Car Show and provided communication support to that. And then the 2025 Potterville Gizzard Fest. We did not have our communication trailer out there, but all the parades we monitor. And then we also assign event talk groups for them to utilize throughout the event. We currently have an opening hiring process for 2 telecommunicator vacancies. That would be for my supervisor who retired, and then a telecommunicator promoted. And then I had 1 telecommunicator who left to go to become a Michigan State Police trooper. So we have those 2 vacancies, and we are looking at oral boards at the end of the month. And that is all I have for my report, if anyone has any questions.
Are there any questions? I see none. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Next, we have number 8, would be the emergency management report.
Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Randall. I am the intern with the Eaton County Emergency Management for the summer, and I'm here to highlight some of the key events that happened in the month of June. One of the major focuses of the month was the North American Active Assailant Conference, which was hosted June 4th to the 6th. Thanks to the Eaton County Emergency Management Funds and funding and support, we were able to cover the cost of 19 participants. This included law enforcement, firefighters, and 911 telecommunicators. The total project cost was $5,750, and this was paid for by the Homeland Security Grant Program. In coordination with the City of Eaton Rapids, we also developed and conducted a tabletop exercise on June 10th in preparation for this year's 4th of July activities. This allowed everyone to evaluate their response plans and coordinate effectively ahead of the holiday. Additionally, the Emergency Operations Center held a separate exercise that focused on using the critical incident management system with the goal of strengthening operational readiness for major incidents. A notable achievement of this month was Ella Gardner earned her Certified Emergency Manager credentials through the International Association of Emergency Managers. On June 25th, Ryan Wilkinson, Vice President of the IAEM Region 5, represented our region at the Legislative Day on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. While he was there, he was able to meet with several U.S. senators and members of the Congress, and even had a one-on-one meeting with Senator Gary Peters. This was made possible through the IEM funding and helped to ensure that emergency managers are heard at the federal level. Lastly, the 2024-2025 multi-year strategic plan has been finalized. where it outlines the goals for closing preparedness gaps through strategic planning, enhanced training, and deeper community engagement. As I wrap up, I just wanted to share how appreciative I am for the opportunities I've had so far during my internship. I've had the chance to attend the Great Lakes Homeland Security Conference, the Active Assailants Conference, and participate in multiple full-scale and tabletop exercises. All of these have contributed to my learning and experience, as well as helping me in my degree. I'm excited for what lies next as I finish up my internship. Thank you so much, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, congratulations to Ella for that. So next we have the prosecutor's office report.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Doug Lloyd. I am your Eaton County Prosecutor. Few things to discuss today. You know, I've been working on a grant that we received from the state that you have previously approved. So far, I think my office has probably 30 hours into trying to do everything that the Treasury personnel continually nitpick over in wanting corrected. But one of the things when I had a half-hour discussion with them yesterday was that they asked, you know, why is it that your 2024 numbers show one amount, but your 2025 numbers show almost the same amount of cases that that you have, that there's no change? And I said, well, have you ever been in a pool or a lake and got tired and all you could do is just try to tread water? I said, the numbers of 7,000 cases, which is what I bring to you almost every month that we have open, they haven't changed because, one, I only have a certain amount of people. Y'all are well aware. I mean, you've actually in your budget proposed that, you know, more be taken away. And on top of that, you just heard from the sheriff, almost all those things that he talked about, they don't just stop there when they get arrested. They end up coming to my office for something to be done with. Perfect example is that in May I came here and actually told you, or excuse me, in June I came here, that we had currently open 7,401 cases. That was the amount of cases. This month, when I bring to you, we actually have 7,491 cases open. My people continue to try to close cases, but the problem is every time they close a case, somebody else got arrested or a police report was filed with our office for us to review, and now we have another case in the system. So we're actually up the amount of cases that we were last month. So he finally understood that, and it's difficult to sometimes speak to accountants, but I think when I finally brought up that, you know, sometimes all you can do in life is tread water, he understood. And no offense, Controller Sobey, I realized when I said what I said, but, you know, he finally got it that, you know, there's not much we can do but try to tread water. Because as these numbers show here, I'm actually up additional cases this month compared to what I was last month. And it's not from a lack of trying on our part. But y'all hear this every month, and I've been thinking about, you know, you've gotten to hear from a lot of my units, you know, and a lot of the focus, you heard it through the sheriff. A lot of the cases that get talked about are sexual assaults or they're domestic violence. You know, I don't want to call them the sexy crimes, but the crimes that, you know, make an impression on people. But I also have another unit that I felt was important to actually discuss, and they don't always feel that they get the love that they should, and that's my fault, and that's our economic crime unit. And they should get the love because they've actually been in existence for 23 years. They've been in existence for 23 years at the Lansing Mall. I ran that unit for 10 years plus myself before I actually became the elected prosecutor. But there's no one on this board who actually was present when that was created or was present during the time that it was actually on a burn grant, or present during the time when I would discuss it after we came off that burn grant. So if you'll oblige me, I'd like to take a couple minutes just so you have an understanding, because if nothing else, y'all each have businesses in your communities, and they've either used my services or they still may not know about it, but they may talk to you and you can point them in the right direction. So in 2002, Jeff Sauter had an idea that crimes were taking place in our community. And I could bring the sheriff or undersheriff up and they would be happy to talk about it. Bad checks are an actual criminal offense. If you write a bad check, a business is charged with actually sending you notice that you wrote a bad check. You have a certain amount of days, 7 days, to either come in and pay the bad check and make it good, or if you don't, then you are basically saying under the law that I knew I didn't have money in my account, I willingly wrote a bad check, and now I've committed a crime. But the problem is, even going back to 2002, MSP, the Sheriff's Department, all of our local agencies didn't have the police force to be able to handle these types of complaints. So unfortunately, police officers who were overwhelmed even back then would look at the local businesses and say, not much we can do for you. You know, you're going to need to handle it civilly. Well, you had lots of businesses just losing money. And we all know that when people steal or when people write bad checks, sooner or later, those costs are going to be passed on to the consumer. But our local businesses were frustrated with that. So Jeff came up with an idea to start the Economic Crime Unit. And its basic premise originally was just to deal with bad checks. That's how we got the burn grant. I came aboard, I was actually working, but I was the drug prosecutor at the time, but I took over for Jeff in that position in June of 2003. The process is that if a business had a bad check, they would send out a notice we created. We made it as simple as possible for the business. They had to bring us 3 pieces of paper, cost them 2 stamps. They'd get the bad check, they'd send out the notice to the person. If the person didn't respond, they would send us a copy of the bad check, a one-page form that we had for them to fill out, and the notice that they had sent to the consumer. We would take it from there. And the goal was to get the money back for the business at no cost to the business. And we ran it on a business model. Basically, we were going to hurt the individual's wallet. And hopefully we were going to teach them that they didn't want to do this. And the way we did that is we let them know that they had committed a crime, but they had one of 2 options. They could either come to the Economic Crime Unit and be a participant, which meant that they were going to pay the bad check fee, as well as any bank fees that the business had incurred. They were going to pay a fee to our office in order for our office to exist, and they were going to have to do whatever other requirements that was, whether that was go to how to organize your life and write a check class, whatever it was, and at times, depending on the types of case, write an apology letter. If they did all that, we were going to deny the case and act like it never happened. We ran from the very beginning and still continue about an 85% success rate with no recidivism. People don't come back. They pay the cost of what it is, for those who choose to participate. Because the other avenue is that if you chose not to participate, then we were going to charge you with the crime. Now, in my office, I have 4 people in my Economic Crimes Unit. I have an attorney, a senior assistant attorney who runs the office. Kelly Fletcher is her name. She's my current attorney, and her job is to oversee what's taking place. I have 2 legal assistants, Marlena and Deanna, and I have Rod Beals, who's my investigator. Now, Marlena, Deanna, and Rod's main job is to basically run the diversion aspect of the economic crime unit. See, because it wasn't long after that we were doing the checks that we kept getting retail frauds, shopliftings. And so the loss prevention officers, while bringing the reports over, would say, hey, you know, wouldn't it be great if you had a diversion program for us? That we could get these first-time offenders in and that we could get our civil demand fee. We could get any restitution for anything that they took, but yet our people aren't going to have to waste time going to court. And so we decided to start that program. And what that meant is that it made less burden at times for the local law enforcement because a Myers could take the retail fraud complaint themselves. They would actually see the person commit the crime. They were going to be the witnesses. They would stop the person. They would take the person up to the office. And instead of having to contact the sheriff's department or Charlotte, they could just call up the sheriff's department or Charlotte and just get a police report number. And then they could bring the case to us. And we would once again offer the person the opportunity and advise them through a letter that you have committed a crime, in my opinion, because I've reviewed the police report, but you can either be a participant and learn from this by taking a shoplifting, how not to shoplift class, how to shoplift better class, apology letters. They're going to pay any fees to the store and a fee to us. Once again, it had a great success rate. Still has a great success rate. It's still used today. We began with Myers and Target, and now we have Lowe's, we have Home Depot. Soon after that, while we were handling those programs, the Secretary of State came to us. Secretary of State's actually located here in Dimondale. And it used to be that the Secretary of State actually, every check from every branch came to Dimondale and was then deposited. That process has changed, but that's how it used to be. So technically, every bad check was being deposited right here in Eaton County. So we took on the process of handling every check for the Secretary of State. Then DHHS came along and said, hey, we have lots of welfare fraud, but we're not really keen on wanting to charge these people for their fraudulent use of welfare fraud. But we'd really like to get the state their money back. Can you help? So we began a process of a program within the economic crime unit of welfare fraud, of basically taking on welfare fraud cases. And then the local rental property agencies, whether it be Home Depot, who rents out equipment, whether it be one of the rental stores here in the county, came to us and said, hey, we have the same problem. People come in, they take $5,000 worth of stuff, they make one payment, and they never show up again. Well, guess what? Failure to return rental property is a crime. So once again, we took that on and offered people the opportunity to be participants and not defendants. Understanding that if they chose to not participate, we would, if the facts were there, we were charging them with the crime. Now, in all these, the great thing is that I had interns. At that time, they were Cooley Law School students, and they would come in and work for me at the economic crime unit. They would volunteer. And the carrot for them was that once they actually got to a position in the office that I was comfortable, I would send them down here to court. And their real goal at that time was that they would show up on preliminary exam day or on pretrial day and basically meet with the unrepresented, who were these people charged with retail fraud or bad checks or welfare fraud. And nicer than I'm going to say, would really say to them, did you think we were screwing around? We were serious. Now that you understand, would you like to participate in diversion now? Amazingly enough, how my participation numbers went up at that point, and people chose to participate in diversion and have their case dismissed rather than proceed forward and end up with a crime, because that's what we were attempting to do. Put money back in the business's pocket and not saddle an individual with another criminal offense, which isn't going to do them any good anyway. Then on top of that, my attorney actually had the responsibility to take on consumer protection complaints. We were really the first in the area that took on bad contractors. There were plenty of cases that we took to trial of contractor fraud, larceny by false pretenses, especially back in the 2008s when we started having all the issues in one of our major crashes at that time in the stock markets. We had a lot of individuals who were taking people's money but not completing the services as contractors. We took those on, but those weren't something that we were handling through diversion. We were prosecuting those, and those fell on the attorney. Still today, I had a local township clerk call me up just the other day and say, hey, I was told by somebody that there used to be a person who actually was an attorney in your office who handled contractors who took people's money and didn't do the job. Some guy. I'm like, well, yeah, that was me, because I did that for 10 years, and now it's Kelly Fletcher. And I told him, you know, you need to put together the investigation portion and get with Kelly, and that's her job. So while Rod, Marlena, and Deanna are over there handling all of the types of complaints like bad checks and frauds and offering the people diversion, Kelly Fletcher is over here not only reviewing all of these complaints, the retail frauds, and making sure the facts are there before we send out our letters offering them diversion, but then on top of that, doing cases such as embezzlement. Because in my opinion, embezzlement is something you don't offer diversion for. If you're actually willing to steal from your employer or from your loved one, there's a price for that. Diversion isn't generally the price that we're going to offer. Or being a bad contractor, it's our responsibility as the prosecutor, as your prosecutor for the county, to make sure that we protect our citizens. And we do that by having an attorney who's fluent in being able to handle those types of cases. And that's what they've been doing quietly for 22 years. And we've never, the only one here who could actually remember it is Controller Sobey. During the time that we were under a burn grant, we used to have to do quarterly reports. I mentioned it to the controller and she rolled her eyes because she used to have to review them. We quit doing that when we went to the burn grant, because we didn't have to anymore. Our job each year was to bring the money in, hopefully, that would pay for itself. That was the whole purpose of bringing up the program. And the whole reason that we had it was that we were under the belief that if we ran it like a business, we didn't have to make a profit. That wasn't our goal. But yet we could bring the money in and cause it where our individuals that were working for us in that unit would be paid for. And on top of that, we would return money to the citizens of the county. Just to give you an idea, from 2003 through 2024, so that would be September 30th, 2024, the Economic Crime Unit has returned to all those groups that we talked about $9,524,116.41. So that number's gone up even more since then. But I'm about at $10 million for a unit that costs the county really nothing. And I'll ask Controller Sobey to hop in because I think she actually took a look at numbers in regards to the numbers in regards to our business. But there's 4 people that work there, 2 legal assistants, the investigator, and my attorney. They've worked out of the Lansing Mall since it opened in 2002. And they do nothing but actually attempt to help businesses or help individuals who get involved with consumer fraud issues. And they never get enough credit. Truly, I should have had a super large celebration for them in 2022. To last as a business or an organization, a unit for 20 years should have been applauded, and that was my failure to not make a bigger deal than I did. But those 4 individuals never complain. They rarely bother me. You know, it's, if you can talk about a perfect unit or perfect employees, they know how to take care of business, and they take care of business every day. And I felt it was important to bring up an aspect that, you know, we don't always talk about. The cases that the sheriff or the other agencies may have when it's an embezzlement, or if it's, you know, some other sort of case, is not going to be one where you're going to see people being chased down the street. It's going to be month-long investigations with hundreds of pages of paper, thousands of numbers sometimes, that you're then going to have to work through as a detective, as an officer, and then as the attorney. And they do that willingly, they do it happily, and they continue to return money to the county. Did you have something, Controller? I can see you wanting to say something.
Oh, because you said I rolled my eyes earlier.
Well,
and I don't
yes,
think
yes,
I did
there's
that,
that.
but, yeah, so, when Prosecutor Lloyd talked to me about this, I do have the history because I'm the one that started working with him when he took over and with, former Prosecutor Sauter. So there is a really good history to this. It was started with a grant. The intent was to provide these services, and then Prosecutor Lloyd and Jeff Sauter had worked on trying to make it self-sufficient. So that's what they did. The significant piece to me in this is that in 2008, 2009, the county had massive issues. So he talks about how, you know, people were struggling, so the county was struggling, and we were looking at cuts. So one of the cuts obviously was going to be in the prosecuting attorney's office. Well, the economic crimes unit was in a special revenue fund, so similar to what dispatch is. And it never hit the general fund never contributed. And Prosecutor Sauter came to me and to former controller and said, we're going to move that money, if you're okay with it, to the general fund to alleviate $400,000, it was over $400,000, of revenue that we were going to lose back then. So that's amazing. You usually don't get something like that. We'll just, you know, they could have continued to run the program, and if their revenues were down, they could have, you know, run it with that. Instead, they took the risk, and I say it's a risk because they moved into the general fund, which made them dependent on the general fund to provide the revenue. And if they fall short, then the board, you know, obviously is looking at that in every department. Anyway, move that money over. Well, since that time, if we include that amount, in 2009, 2010 is when we did that, they had made, for the county, over $900,000 to 9/30/24. So they have not cost the county money at all. It's made the county money, if you want to look at it as making money. So fully self-sufficient, that's evaluated every year. Dry mouth. As Prosecutor Lloyd said, the Secretary of State has changed. So he is constantly, and Kelly Fletcher, the attorney there, is constantly looking at how they can improve services for everyone and any business. Clinton County, Ingham County, they've done work for, to basically do the same thing, and then it's bringing that revenue into our county. So that would be the only loss that the county would have, would be the Secretary of State, any loss that we have there. So, I mean, it's been a great program, and it's been great for the merchants and for everyone. So, and it hasn't harmed the county. It's good. Did I cover that well enough?
You did, thank you. Yeah, I would throw in on that several years ago, we actually took over doing the welfare fraud diversion for Ingham and Clinton. Clinton came to us when they got a new prosecutor up there, Prosecutor Spagnolo, and asked if we would start taking on some of their criminal diversion cases, which were specific cases where they could have charged but felt there was a different way to go, classes that way, than handling that. So we came up with a program with them. We are also doing, and for years, we've had businesses that, take a plumbing business. They take a bad check in Eaton County, they can bring the bad check to Eaton County. They take a bad check in Ingham County, well, Ingham County had a program that was run from a company out of state. Nobody was ever happy with the program. The prior prosecutors I spoke to, I knew very well, but none of them were really in a mood to take things, to really make changes. The new prosecutor and I have grown up together, and Rod Beals and Kelly Fletcher and myself sat down with he and his chief assistant, and they were like, go ahead. So now we have moved into taking over bad checks for businesses in Ingham County as well. And so we are, while the Secretary of State has changed, we are constantly trying to evolve. And I have to kind of laugh because, and maybe you've seen it depending on the business you've gone to, but there's a little yellow sign out there. And if you look at it, it says, Prosecutor Doug Lloyd, will prosecute you if you write a bad check. It's actually still a doctor's office in Grand Ledge that if I'll look in the window when I'm going by, you could still see this faded yellow sign, but it's the same one from, years ago. And so it's still an active thing, and I'm proud of the unit and wanted to take a little different turn and give you a few minutes for you to understand that. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes, ma'am.
See one question first. Commissioner Haskell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Prosecutor, for highlighting this. It was quite eye-opening. I'd always had heard about the bad checks, the shoplifting, but I was not aware of the services provided to the state. Does your office receive any compensation from the state for providing those services, or is it just because you're already working on it and it's?
No, the way it works is if you go into diversion,
Yeah.
then there is going to be the monies that you pay to the state, and we have a set diversion fee for you to come in, because we are looking at all cases. First, we make the determination, could we have prosecuted you? If we can't, then we're not going to run you through diversion either. But if we can, then we're offering you the opportunity with the state's blessing to bring you into diversion. So basically, a diversion fee is, y'all have been talking about it, right? You have your admin fee in all your grant programs. Our diversion fee is our admin fee.
Sure.
It's what allows us to, to have a brick and mortar spot, to have my investigators, to have the IT technology, to have all the things that I need in my office. That's what the diversion fee does. So they'll pay that diversion fee, and then we will work with them, because obviously it's difficult, especially if you're talking about welfare fraud. Well, how do they pay? Well, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've always said that it's not that you don't have the money, you just haven't asked the right person yet for it. And amazingly enough, when it comes down to, would you rather have a felony or, get away from this, they will find the money. It may take them a little bit, and that's what my people will do, is work with them in order to get that paid off.
Sure. And then the final question I have, for your 7,491 cases that you have, does that include the cases that your economic crime unit carries
does.
to? How many of those cases do you know roughly?
Well, there is at any time probably 2,000 open cases that are running at the economic crime unit at any time that 3 dedicated people are handling.
Yeah.
And those are in various stages as well, and that would include, obviously, I'm going to guess that because each of my attorneys is probably carrying 700 or 800 cases by themselves, and so I would not doubt that that Kelly Fletcher is probably has those same numbers as well. And and while I have you know, Andrea Marty, who runs my DV unit, you know, and CSC's looking at those. I got Kelly Fletcher sitting over here with 100 pages, you know, looking at an embezzlement case. So,
Awesome. Thank you.
And yes, Commissioner Christensen.
So Brandon had asked a few of the questions that I had. One of them was if part of the 7,491 was from the Economics Crime Unit. So I guess you said around 2,000 cases. Are those all pending, waiting cases to be handled still, or are some of those already going through the diversion program?
yeah, those 7,000 cases that we talk about are cases that are in our system. So
Okay,
they could be, you know, I just got it on the day that, you know, Chris runs the numbers for me, all the way up until, you know, a case is open in my office, all the way up until it finally gets the close button and gets shoved down in the vault.
and how long does that diversion program typically take?
It depends. You know, you can have a retail fraud. My retail frauds and bad checks are probably my fastest cases because whatever, you know, you're coming in, you should be coming in. Well, it's the old days. Things have changed, but we'll go back to the way I did it. You know, money orders were the things because obviously we weren't taking a check from them. And we really couldn't take cash. That wasn't, you know, it wasn't, I believe Controller Sobey said way back then that taking cash was not really the smartest thing for us to do. So we took money orders. So they would bring in 2 money orders. One for the business, which then my people that could turn around with a letter that says, hey, you got paid, here's your money order, and one for the county. And they were supposed to bring that along with whatever other requirements. They would have a meeting with my investigator and fill out the necessary paperwork, sitting right there, and, you know, a 15, 20-minute meeting, and they'd be done at that point. And it was, like I said, like an 85% success rate of people not wanting to come back after they had done that. Retail frauds, those are a little more extensive. Once again, you have the 2-check aspect, but, you know, after they have the meeting with the investigator, we're going to, now COVID changed it a little bit. We moved to online a little bit more. Used to be that we had a specific group that actually ran a couple of economic crimes classes, you know, for people on how to change your ways, that they had to go 2 Saturdays in a row. So they would have to go to those classes, and then we would get notice that they had attended. Then we would say the case is dismissed. A welfare fraud, you know, those amounts can be anywhere from $100 to $100,000. So, you know, that really, there's a lot more intricacies because we're working with DHHS at that point as to how they are handling their processes of, you know, of the pullback of the money. We're having to work with the individuals that it happened to. And so some of those cases go on for 2 years, depending on, you know, because we are a firm believer, you know, we're not a collection agency. And when I began this program years ago, we really tried to be like, you will pay now. There is no messing around. But then you got to like 08 and everybody was hurting. And, you know, and you know, you can't get blood from a turnip. And so you began to work with people. So, and my investigator, you know, I've had good ones, you know, throughout the time, all the way back to Bobby Kellogg, who started it, and Rod Beals finished, you know, just continues it. They know, they were former cops. They know how to talk to people, and they understand, you know, whether to trust a person or not. So if that person promises, I can give you $100 every month on this bad check, you know, they'll take it if they believe that it'll work. And I can remember one case, and I don't remember what specifically a type it was, but it literally took the woman 2 years to pay off this debt. But faithfully on the, you know, 10th of the month, she was there with her money order. And, you know, and if I had Rod right here, you know, he'd be able to shout out the name for me. You know, he knows it. So it all depends on the case. And then that doesn't even include the criminal cases that Kelly gets involved in, because we do a retail fraud. Let's say we offer the person diversion, we're going to give them a couple weeks. We give them a cutoff date to call. If they don't call, then at that point, Kelly has to issue the case. Deanna or Marlena have to put it into the system and get it down to the main office. Then it begins the whole process here. The person has to get arraigned. Then after they get arraigned, there's a pretrial. Then the process begins again of, did you think we're kidding? Do you want to join diversion now? And if they don't, then there's still the rest of the avenues till we get to the point of, a sentencing.
Thank you for that.
All right.
Any other questions for prosecutor? Oh, you have a comment? Go ahead.
Sorry, don't have a question, but you talking about all this money in and out, made me think. One of the things that Prosecutor Lloyd did back in, I think it was like 2007, maybe it was a little later than that, hired an accounting firm to come in, and it's not a forensic audit, but it's a way to have your checks and balances. It was very detailed. My office spent time over at the Economic Crimes Unit. We went through every process that they have for taking the money in and then distributing it back to merchants. So there are checks and balances. Everything runs through their office, comes to my office, and the checks are distributed out of my office with the letter to the merchant. So there's a check and balance there, and that is handled annually through our audit, because there are what we call holding accounts, because it's really not the county's money unless it's the fee. The rest of it is just in and out. It's a trust account. So that's all balanced and evaluated every year. Just wanted to because that's a lot of money coming in and out.
And that should be, Controller can tell me if I'm wrong, but we were one of the first units to actually begin using credit cards.
Yes.
Because that was a thing that people were like, because when all the checks were coming in from the Secretary of State, we're sending letters to the UP for people who had written a bad check. But the check was cashed here in Eaton County. So we had the authority over that. But people would be like, can I give you my credit card? And so we actually, sitting down with Controller Sobey, we came up with an idea to actually begin using credit cards. And we've probably been using credit cards for almost 20 years. And so we were one of the first units within the county to actually start taking credit card payments.
Any other questions for the prosecutor? I don't see any. I really appreciate the time, sir.
Thank you very much.
Very informative for me, at least. There's a question from Scott.
Yes, on the various caseloads that you have now, the 7,000 and the 2,000 and so forth. Okay. What's the basic problem? Is it mainly a lack of personnel to do those, the paperwork and everything?
Well, I mean, you think about it, right? 7,000 cases are the ones that are sitting there and screening all the way to the point of where my appeals attorney, Christopher Candela, is handling up in this, all the way up to the Supreme Court. So that's the gamut of where a case can go. But, when I have attorneys that are spending, 10, 20 hours in court a week, they are only dealing with whatever the court has set on that docket. So if it's 25 cases or if it's 50 cases, and while I wish I can guarantee you that 25 or 50 cases didn't get resolved, we didn't get pleas, we didn't get, because a case really isn't really moving until it gets sentenced. That's the next big step. So that case is still sitting there. But at the same point, they each have, 200 cases, 100 cases, whatever the number is, sitting in their queue. That's all the cases that the sheriff just talked about that have come in, from him. Which is why I said, hey, that's great that y'all are doing your deal with Delta, but you're not increasing my people, so you're bringing back a full staff in Delta, because all that stuff that you just heard about from the sheriff was Delta, but yet I'm still sitting actually at less amount of people than I was. So I don't have the people to actually be able to, you're only gonna move so much stuff, right? I mean, we got farmers here. There's only so much manure you can move with so many people. If you want to move more manure, you better get some more people to do it. And I don't have the people to move it. So we just keep treading water. One case gets done, one or two more come into the queue. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay.
So any other questions? I'm looking all around. I see none. Appreciate it,
Thank you.
prosecutor. Moving on, our next item, number 10, miscellaneous. Are there any miscellaneous?
No.
No miscellaneous. We have the next time of limited public comment. Would anybody hear limited public comment? Oh, there it comes.
My name is Jim Billig. You all know my face by now. I've been back again and again. I would just want to say, give you an idea of what I've been doing. I've been calling Whitmer's office. Whitmer's office. I sat in Tom Barrett's office yesterday with his staff in Lansing. Anthony and Bijou and Gary Peters and the Farm Bureau. And I call them every couple days. And I'm sure they're getting tired of me, and I don't care. These numbers are life-changing, and I know you have your budget woes right now, but I think you people, you need to have a look at this. I don't have anything against the drain guy. And, a lot of people are saying, oh, you really must have it out for him. If he's got issues with other people, I don't know. He goes by the rules, and he only has to answer to the governor, and that's pretty much what he told me when I went in the office. I don't think that's professional. I don't think it's appropriate. And I don't think you people should feel it's appropriate. But I have nothing personal with them. The rules need to change for these huge assessments, life-changing assessments. I talked to a farmer up the road from me who's worked his whole life. He's in his mid-60s. He wanted to remain anonymous. And he knows he watches the show videos from here, and he's hearsay about what my bill is. He, like I said, he wanted to remain anonymous about it, but his is over $170,000. Now, how's a man in his 60s, approaching retirement, going to pay $170,000? A farmer. I just, I don't know. I hope that people are looking into this. That's all I'm going to say for now. Thank you.
Okay. Was there anyone else? Public comment section. See none. I would say we're adjourned.